What's the most unsatisfying BS ending to a TV series? The Amazing World of Gumball ended on a gigantic cliffhanger, and for 2 years we were anxiously waiting for a movie announcement which would resolve that cliffhanger. Thankfully the movie was announced earlier this year. The Cartoon Network show. It's kind of weird to me to hear how all those shows I watched when I was a kid are ending. Adventure Time ended and regular show ended too. Reminds me that it was fucking 7 years ago that I last cared about watching network TV. But at the same time at least they didn't go down the Nickelodeon route of let's milk this for money. Castle was a detective drama show starring Nathan Fillion, Mel and Firefly. The season is wrapping up. His new-ish wife is becoming a senator. From a detective. Side note, this was confirmed to happen by a guy that was strongly suggested to be a time traveler. Then they're talking in the kitchen and some guy comes in and shoots both of them. They're both bleeding on the ground. Then it cuts 2 years in the future and they're laughing and smiling with their 2 young children with some voiceover talking about some BS that I can't even remember. Star Trek Enterprise. After having an incredible 2-partner that easily would have worked as the finale, there was an extra episode which is basically Riker from TNG plays in events that take place 10 years after you last saw everyone. They kill off one of the main characters, and then cut off Archer just as he's about to give his big speech. At least the very last scene is good fan service. The books end up retconning the whole thing, but I haven't read them. I believe the last episode was so shit, rushed because the writers were angry about it being cancelled. Honestly can't remember the exact reason, but they basically did a big fuck you by killing off Trip. Castle. All of Season 8 is complete shit, trying to retread old ground. Season 7 works as a great ending to the series. If they wanted to keep it going, they should have had Beckett be pregnant. Show us how Beckett deals with being a working mom. Show us how Castle deals with being a stay-at-home dad. Show us how Alexis deals with having a sibling she's old enough to be the parent of. Show us how Martha deals with the new grandkid. So much potential there that could have been. Cries and God. Edit. Tie for my first awards. Petition for all 4K of us to harass the shiznit out of GRRM via seance if he croaks before finishing a soif. God was among the biggest pop culture phenomena of the past decade. Everyone, their grandma, and their dog was watching. The show ended on such a sour note that we've collectively disowned it. And that's an accomplishment unto itself. People should be regularly rewatching that series like they do with The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, but nope. The OA. I'm tired of shows being cancelled before they're finished. I'm especially tired of everyone proclaiming that Netflix will save all of these other cancelled shows like My Name is Earl, another cancelled before its time show, etc. They can't even let their own original content play through anymore and are no longer saviors of forgotten or abandoned shows. Man in the High Castle. If they just cut out the last episode it's actually a good ending. Show definitely needed another season. I loved this show too, but in my opinion the whole last season was a flub. It was very obvious they didn't intend for it to be the true last season, so when they got cancelled they just closed up all the arcs as fast and shitty as possible. I still disagree entirely with adding that whole resistance organization in the final season. What the hell is the point of introducing 10 new characters in the final season? Really left a bad taste in my mouth, just the same as when they brought Frank back from the dead. Seemed very cheap. ALF. Poor guy getting catched by the government. What a shitty ending for a family sitcom. Was maybe done because they produced a follow-up movie. To my understanding, the TV series ending was planned as a season finale cliffhanger. The showrunners didn't know they were being cancelled until later. The movie came about as an attempt to wrap things up after the fact, a fortunate outcome that the majority of abruptly cancelled shows never get the chance to have. Street Elsewhere. A hospital drama that ran for 6 years. The final episode ends with an autistic boy staring at the hospital in a snow globe. It was all in his head. The entire show. Author Cynthia Burkett explains that with this final shot, Street Elsewhere managed to take the idea of a dream and alter it just enough, putting it in the imagination of an autistic boy, and surmises that an ending constructed in this manner reminds viewers that the fiction they have watched for 6 years is actually fiction within a fiction, occupying a second level of unreality, one level beyond the space of illusion filled by all narrative television. Rome, the original Goths. They had this awesome 5-season plan that would span the whole empire and end with the rise of Christianity in the East. But each episode was so expensive they rushed the second season to end it. I enjoyed, but it wasn't the same. Characters has 2 episodes arcs to justify what normally would take whole seasons. I could totally see Lucius being taken in by this Christian cult of forgiveness and redemption after having his faith in proper Roman morals shaken by seeing all the corruption and violence. I would have loved to see that. The Mentalist. They basically created the ultimate bad guy, a serial killer named Red John, probably expecting to get cancelled before they had to explain or go into any significant details about him. Then once they weren't cancelled, had to scramble to try and make the story work, and it didn't. The ending was disappointing and really didn't make sense. Gotta say, I didn't care for the finale of Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Really, the whole last season felt rushed, but destroying magic and merging all the worlds together. First off, there's no way there aren't massive wars. How do you think it would go if a country just spontaneously appeared in the middle of Russia, China, the US, or any country large enough to contain a country like that? Not to mention that there would clearly be millions of entities that relied on magic to exist, considering they show it kills the council. Star Trek Voyager. The crux of the series was that the Voyager and its crew were thrust to the other side of the galaxy, and it would have taken decades for them to return home. They found ways to cut years off their journey in their 7-season run. The very last episode involves time travel, what ultimately devolves into cheat codes. Hey, I'm you from the future. Here's a bunch of advanced technology to aid you in using this shortcut, and the last scene of the series is them getting home, but we aren't shown any falling action from that. Extremely unsatisfying and unearned. It was the equivalent of someone telling you a story and the end is just them lifting up their leg to release a massive fart and laughing at you. Some kind of build-up over multiple episodes would have gone a long way in making the finale less jarring. Even if they couldn't figure out a very different way to end it, like the end of DS9 made a few story-convenient twists in order to wrap everything up, but it was set up throughout half of the last season so it didn't feel rushed or cheap. Again, add the end of Enterprise to the list, too, just for making it all about TNG. Arrested Development's final episode was so boring to watch, along with the Buster is a Killer storyline. Honestly, the Netflix seasons made the Bloth so unlikable and psychopathic that it felt like the show turned into a parody of itself. Such a chore to sit through and watch. Yup. 100% agree. It's just so hard to reconcile how the same group of people can make something as brilliant as seasons 1-3 and as absolutely terrible, and terribly unfunny, as seasons 4-5. I've rewatched the show almost 5 times and I've never seen the Netflix seasons past the first episode of season 4. I think season 3's ending is a good enough finale for that show than I could have hoped, and I feel like I'm not missing out. Not sure if many here will have seen it, but Episodes. It was a show about a British couple coming to the US to recreate their acclaimed show, and the network they work for hires Matt LeBlanc as the star against their will. Well, by the end of the show their show is destroyed, but they become great friends with Matt, and in the final episode it's revealed they've made a pilot of a new show about their journey in the US, called Episodes. So we've effectively been watching their show the whole time. It's a twist that's been done to death, and I always felt the show's writing was above that level. They definitely phoned it in towards the end, which was a shame. The Glades. But I feel like I'm the only one who knows this, as nobody else watched it. Basically just a procedural cop drama in Florida, but the whole show they play up this will they won't they with the girl who's married to Matt Saracen in real life. In the final season they finally get married and main dude buys the girl's dream house to surprise her. He's getting it all set up for them to come home to after wedding, and best man calls to tell him he's late and needs to hurry up for his wedding, and Mick is like, yeah, I'm just making things perfect, and bam, shadowy figure shoots Mick. He falls into the rose petals, blood pools. Best man is saying his name over and over on the phone. Fade to black, credits. The show was already cancelled before this aired, so I watched it and knew I would never know who TF shot this guy and why. I'll never get over it. Supernatural. I was so freaking pissed. Spent 15 years of my life, since a wee lad, watching this show, and the ending was crap. The acting and storylines in the last few seasons was crap also. But seriously, throughout the show they make it known that Dean Winchester is this big awesome, one of the best, if not the best, hunter, and he dies in by a freaking vampire? Really? Question mark. They killed Lucifer, God, Leviathans, yellow-eyed demons, freaking Adolf Hitler. But he dies by a vampire pushing him into a freaking sharp thing, and the end montage of Sam growing old and having a family felt like the biggest troll. Honestly, I still love the show for the early seasons, but the ending was disappointing. Very. The Mentalist. They gathered up all the actors who were suspected to be Red John and basically just went teeny meeny miny mo. No suspense, no twist, just okay, we'll go with this guy. Was always hoping of a more clever reveal, like Red John and Jane being twin brothers who've been switching roles back and forth throughout the series, like a certain Christian Bale movie. From what I remember of the show, it was a sort of Sherlock-inspired series. Red John is his Moriarty and Lisbon was his Watson. The series suffered by making Red John far too ghostly and non-corporeal for too much of the series. It at times seemed to heavily imply Red John was an alias for multiple people. If you're going to have a Moriarty-level villain behind the alias pulling background strings and toying with the super-intelligent main character, you need to deliver on that promise with the person that gives that Moriarty vibe. From what I remember, the ending of the Red John arc just left me going, huh. Okay, I guess that's done with, but was that actually Red John? Or just another decoy? The fact I was left doubting that the real Red John had finally been uncovered is either my cynicism of the series by that point or shows just how poorly picked the reveal was. But then I wasn't super invested in the whole things and haven't rewatched the show, so I'm going from what I remember from years ago and a quick cast Google. I didn't remember Lisbon's name even. Bran Stark being made king of Westeros because he has the best story. I will venture a guess that D&D were higher on cocaine and getting blown by Russian escorts on a yacht when they wrote the script for season 8. Honestly, I feel like the Bran the King ending comes from GRRM. He told D&D where he wanted it to end and they got to it before him. He knows people hate it, and somehow I feel like that is part of the reason why he doesn't have the motivation to finish his series. There is no other ending. Not a whole show, but the end of the second generation of the group of kids in Skins UK. Spoiler, Freddy is murdered and no one investigates or reacts to it. Really pissed me off. That second group of kids were some of the best, and those story arcs were great, and they really dropped the ball on how it all ended. Hell, in the last season where Effie lives with Naomi they don't even mention Freddy once. It was all thrown together so sloppy and obviously poorly planned, and the fans and those actors and the characters didn't deserve it. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. The ending was so rushed and it didn't make sense. They killed the Mick in the last 5 minutes and we didn't even get to see how the other characters handled her death. The most ridiculous thing was that Sabrina and Nicholas just got back together and he out of the blue decided to kill himself to be with her forever. It was a great series with a lot of potential, but Netflix decided to cut it at the 4th season, giving us a shitty ending. Death Note. Obviously, spoiler warning. The entire show is two intellectual madmen dueling it out. Kira Light and El are playing the greatest game of chess. But when El dies and Nier, his successor, gets the best of Light, it's kind of staled, and the line, Mello always said he was going to be number one, and that he was going to be better than me and El, but I always knew that I would never be able to surpass El. It could be that I lacked the action and he lacked the calm. And even though we couldn't surpass the one we admired on our own, Together we can stand with L, together we can surpass L, is fucking bullshit. I would rather see either L beats Kira, not Nier, or Kira defeating Nier. Smurfs Saturday morning cartoons. One Saturday they just didn't tear the show. Worst ending ever. I never got to know how Smurfs are born. I mean, you have Papa Smurf, but no Mama Smurf. Then you have Smurfette, who is the only female Smurf, then 99 other male Smurfs. Is Papa Smurf a pedophile smurfing his daughter, or is Smurfette the Smurf doorknob and everyone gets a Smurf at her Smurf? The paternity cases alone would be crazy, and those Smurflings don't have any stable Smurf parents to look up to. The more I think about it, Gargamel was probably the only one who understood this family incest pool and was only trying to right a wrong in Mother Nature. Also, Israel was a wicked cat. The 2000s Battlestar Galactica series. The writers decided at the end that it was actually God who had orchestrated the entire plot, including all kinds of needless death, so that humans and androids would join together on Earth to interbreed and create a far superior species of more regular ass humans, just like the ones on the show, who are no different than us. They also decided that two apparently hallucinated characters were in fact angels, like from the Bible, and at the end the two angels look on in satisfaction at the wonderful promised land the humans make on Earth thousands of years later, which is just our society in like 2007. I'm surprised I had to scroll this down to find this. It was like they intentionally made the worst possible ending, and it had started so well. I loved the first 3 seasons, but then it went downhill and the ending was awful. While it's not quite the same kind of series as others listed, WCW Nitro Shed was the hottest thing in the world in 97-98, the NWO, WCW feud, Sting in the rafters, plus cruiserweights stealing the show, Goldberg's streak, solid mid-card feuds, everything was just fantastic. Somehow they threw it all in the trash with the most botched ending ever. When Sting finally got to face Hogan, they ended Goldberg's streak by using a fucking cattle prod, the finger poke of doom, and eventually rebranding and rebooting the entire promotion. Everything from 2000 on was just trash, and it's amazing that they went from hottest promotion in the world to getting bought out by WWF in about 2 years. WWF botched the invasion angle as well, but they didn't have much to work with in terms of star power by that point. But still, Nitro was my jam, and Bischoff, Bruce, ran it into the ground practically overnight. I am furious with some of the choices made on the end of The Office. Over time they turned Andy Bernard from a shitty character that everyone hated into a lovable dude. They gave him a cute relationship with Irene, and then all of a sudden, they decide he's a dick again and that he ditches Irene. Then they kinda make him likable again by giving him a goal of becoming a performer. And they end the series by making him completely fail at that and just becoming a meme on the internet. Hate what they did with the character I was starting to grow fond of. Also, the Jim and Pam drama in the later seasons was just incredibly uncomfortable to watch. I came here to have a good time, not to watch a relationship drama. Gossip Girl. Although by that point everyone who had stuck around knew the show was shit and the writers and cast members were over it, I did love the memes that came out of it, with everyone making fun of how little sense it made that then was Gossip Girl. And the best was the press tour afterwards where Penn Badgley was like, yeah, the writers told me jack shit and it makes no sense, while the showrunners were like, what are you talking about, we wrote it this way from the beginning. The Promised Neverland. Season 1 was amazing and faithful to the manga. Season 2 was the exact opposite of that. They skipped what many fans felt was the best unadapted arc, as well as many other things. They also rushed the stuff they didn't skip. To put it into context, they adapted 37 chapters in the first season and covered the remaining 144 in the second season. The production committee hired the studio to take one of the animes was looking forward to the most and shit on it the hardest I've ever seen. Edit, I forgot to add that it got to the point where nobody wanted to take writing credit. Dollhouse. The whole second season was BS. It started out as a cool show about the ethical implications of programming people into different roles and wiping their memories, consent, and morality in general. It turned into a sci-fi end-of-the-world technological Armageddon dumpster fire. The worst part, to me, was watching Sierra and Victor, I think, finally getting to be together by the end of season 1, and then season 2 opens with them married with a child, but forever separated because of ideological differences. Just a punch in the gut to those of us who were rooting for them the whole first season.